I think I'm gonna take off my glasses.
Sure.
I don't see you guys.
Ouch.
Oh, my phone live. Okay. Okay, so my name is Elizabeth Hymas, and here is my argument. Okay, we all go through breakups, at least once in our lifetime. Some of us may go maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times. There's no escaping it. But dealing with a breakup, a woman experiences more harmful consequences compared to a man. Okay. Most findings, to back my argument, I can personally testify to them. And if they get too personal, then it was a close friend. Okay. So women suffer a greater loss of time invested in a relationship because they are looking for a life partner. So there's more for them to lose if they get pregnant. Well, then they're stuck with the kid for the rest of their life, while the man could go away. So there's potential candidates for a husband, a life partner, a father, a best friend, and a roommate, right? So society and media have put these standards on women. So you watch a love story or you watch television, so then a woman is usually the heartbroken one while the guy is out there having the time of his life after a breakup. We have the media that shows, or media could be music, like Adele, which would be crying her heart out to a person that she knew a long time ago. And then there's this TV that we watch every single day. So the CW has this show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So this show just takes it to the extremes on this woman that never got over her ex. So she moves from New York to West Covina just to follow him. And it deals with suffering to the extreme level. So next is women are prone to ask questions. So they deal with the heartbreak right after. They want to know, what do I do wrong? Why doesn't he love me? While guys would take the tough guy approach, where they will go out with their friends, act like everything's fine, and move on to the next one. When women find their friends, their family, and they'll try to get distracted, they'll try to go out, but then alcohol gets involved, and alcohol leads to bad decisions. So there's drunk dialing, there's drunk texting, and there's showing up at your ex's house unexpectedly. So women are more cautious when they're moving on and letting go of the relationship. Studies show that sadness and depression, as well as anxiety, fear, and loss of focus are slightly higher than men. In this process, they take an emotional and physical toll. They lose appetite, they lose sleep, and there's lots of crying. Okay, so during this time, there could also be breakup sex. So this is what you want to avoid 100% if you're a girl, because it brings, there's a hormone called oxytocin, which is called also the cuddle hormone. And this can make you trust your ex again, and then there's a whole cycle all over again, because you lower your defenses, you're risking of falling in love again, and it could be one-sided. In an article that I found in Cosmo, it said that it's like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back when you do that. And then it's generally one person who wants to be friends and the next person who wants to be more. So, conclusion, although we all go through breakups, it's how we deal with them that impacts the person's life. A woman's experience during a breakup with her time wasted, feelings exposed, and holding on to the past is much more than a man's.
Can we ask a question?
Probably shouldn't.
Talk to me.
All right, Elizabeth, let's see here. I could pick out the proposition at the beginning of your speech, so it is stated, but it's not identified as the right, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's not identified as the proposition. I think you want to more explicitly say that the point that I'm going to be arguing for tonight is this particular claim. You did have a claim, and I could pick out that it was the proposition, but again, I think that you're trusting too much that your audience is listening well, and they may or may not be. I know there should be 3 people at least who are listening well. The person who's doing the written evaluation of you, the person who's going to be doing the refutation of you, and me. The other 23 people, maybe they're listening, maybe they're not. You got to help them out a little bit. There's not really a preview that I could see of what the supporting structure is going to be, and I couldn't really pick out a structure. It just felt like you were kind of wandering around some of the emotional issues that come up when people break up. And sometimes they're not really stated as claims, they're just examples or illustrations. And like I said, they seem to be a little bit random. I'm not sure that you're building an argument so much as you're kind of venting about some of the dumb things that people do when they break up. Your claim is that women are going to suffer more from this than men are, and the very first thing that you talk about is this, the time that's involved in it. Well, the time that's involved in it, your primary proof on that is if there's a child involved. Other than that, I'm not sure why there is a difference in the amount of time between the 2 people involved. I mean, if they went together for 3 years and they broke up, then each of them is invested 3 years. And if there's no child involved, I'm not sure why your point is true. Now, when there is a child involved, that seems to presuppose that men are indifferent to their offspring, which I'm not saying is not the case. I think it is probably the case for a lot of people, but I think you need to make that argument. You need to show, for example, that millions of children or hundreds of children or thousands of children every year are, for the most part, abandoned by their fathers. Even if they provide financial support for them, they don't provide the emotional support, which leaves the mother then to have to do those kinds of things. That might be one way to quantify the point that you're talking about. But that's kind of an afterthought at this point. I think you needed to have something more than that. I'm not exactly sure that we should be drawing an inference from the craziness that goes on television. You've got this example of the crazy ex-girlfriend, for instance, who moved from New York to West Covina. She's not in this class, is she? Because West Covina, that's right around here. It could easily be the case. Just as an illustration, I'm going to say this. I don't know that the respondent would make this argument, but if you're comparing men and women, I don't know that I've heard a case of a jealous woman who's gone out on a rampage and killed her boyfriend, but I've heard hundreds of cases of jealous ex-boyfriends killing their ex-girlfriends and that kind of thing. So if there's craziness involved, the notion that suggests that women suffer more than men, if we're measuring it by crime statistics, I think it might be a little bit different. It might be the exact opposite of what you're talking about. I think you need some better data on these kinds of points. The only place I got some vague references to emotional studies. It needs to be more specific than that. And that emotional study didn't sound like it was specific to breakup behavior, and it said that there's a slight difference. So it's ambiguous to begin with, and it's not directed specifically at breakups, so I'm not exactly sure that I would be making the inference that you're making off of it, and I think that's a little bit problematic. The one source that gets cited is Cosmo, and even then you're kind of paraphrasing what's being said in the article. It's not a direct quote, and I'm still not quite sure that it identifies one gender or the other as the one that's suffering. It just talks about how it's a bad idea to have breakup sex because somebody is going to have this particular problem. And I guess maybe women get more oxytocin than men. I don't know. I don't remember that was specified in your argument. All right, it's an interesting argument. All right, I think you need stronger proof. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Rivera.